Welcome back to True Echo, the channel where real-life power meets poetic justice. Today's story is a quiet thunderstorm, a reckoning wrapped in calm, where prejudice met its match in an older black woman with a billion-dollar empire and a mind like steel. When airport staff laughed at her accent and humiliated her in front of a crowd, they had no idea who they were pushing aside, or what was about to hit them. This is the story of how silence became the loudest warning, and how a single woman quietly brought an entire airport system to its knees. The morning air at JFK Airport hung cold and still, clinging to the vaulted glass ceiling as if it, too, held its breath. Travelers bustled past one another in waves, families trying to corral toddlers, executives tapping through emails, and students dragging oversized backpacks. But amidst the chaos stood a woman who moved differently. Calmly. Deliberately. She didn't command attention through noise, but rather, with the dignified silence of someone who'd spent her entire life proving she belonged. Marjorie Reed, 57, stood tall in a navy wool coat, a cream silk scarf knotted at her throat. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled neatly into a bun, and the leather handle of her well-worn suitcase rested comfortably in her palm. To anyone watching closely, she looked like a seasoned traveler. What they didn't know, and wouldn't bother to learn, was that she wasn't just a passenger. She was the founder and CEO of Reed Global Travel, a $950 million private empire that quietly moved more international business than any Fortune 100 travel agency. Last night, she'd flown 11 hours from Sao Paulo, reviewing every document, confirming every itinerary. That's what you do when the world expects you to make a single mistake to justify their bias. She had booked first class on the 9:30 a.m. non-stop flight to San Francisco, seat 2A, printed clearly on her boarding pass. It wasn't indulgence, it was routine. She'd earned the right to comfort through 3 decades of building her company from a single room in Atlanta to a network spanning 5 continents. But as she approached the check-in desk, everything changed. Tanya Bennett stood behind the counter, polished, poised, her blonde hair pulled into a high bun. She looked up with the expression of someone who'd already decided who Marjorie was before she even spoke. The moment Marjorie greeted her, Tanya's smile twisted into a smirk. "You certainly have a distinct accent," she said, tapping the keyboard with performative diligence. "Southern, huh? Georgia? Alabama?" The implication dripped off her voice. The same tone Marjorie had heard 1,000 times before. Mocking. Patronizing. As if her calm drawl invalidated her intelligence. "I'm here for flight 2930, Marjorie replied evenly. "Seat 2A. First class." Tanya didn't bother to look closely. "The system reassigned you. You're now in seat 34C. The words were loud, unnecessarily so. Loud enough for the people behind to glance up, some curious, some annoyed. Tanya didn't stop there. "Sometimes the system does that if there's a flag," she added with false concern. "Are you sure you booked first class correctly, ma'am?" Marjorie knew better than to react emotionally. Instead, she quietly produced her email confirmations, her booking code, and the original QR boarding pass. Tanya barely glanced at them before waving over her supervisor. Grant Miller arrived like a man born to ignore problems. His suit was tailored, his voice detached. Without even meeting her eyes, he muttered, "System says economy. We can't override it. Please step aside." The words might have been professional. The tone was not. And every syllable struck like a cold blade. Still, Marjorie did not raise her voice. She didn't argue. She simply stepped aside, but not before taking note of Tanya's smirk, Grant's disinterest, and the way Dylan Drayton, a young white man in shorts and flip-flops, was ushered through first class without a second glance. He didn't even have his ID out. Marjorie settled into the waiting area across from the counter. She watched the staff. Observed their body language. Noted every word exchanged behind the glass desks. 2 employees nearby, Megan Hayes and Chuck Evans, were already whispering. Doesn't scream money, Megan muttered, phone in hand. Old folks always think they're important, Chuck said, chuckling. Then came the moment that solidified everything. Megan subtly lifted her phone and snapped a photo of Marjorie, shielding it just enough to hide it from view. Moments later, it appeared in the staff group chat labeled Elite Crew Lounge. The caption read, "Old lady about to flip out over her first-class ticket. Bet she sues." Laughing emojis filled the screen. To them, she wasn't a CEO or a customer. She was a punchline. An inconvenience. A problem to be laughed at, silenced, and erased. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. Marjorie had spent decades enduring microaggressions in boardrooms and on runways. She'd grown up in a world where women who looked like her were told to be quiet, to step aside. She'd built an empire by turning pain into purpose, and silence into strength. So she documented everything. The names on the badges. The smirks. The whispers. Every detail was recorded in her phone, tagged and time-stamped. Her team in Los Angeles had already flagged several remarks about her in the airport's internal systems, thanks to an AI tool her legal team had quietly deployed to monitor discriminatory behavior at key partner locations. Freeze all JFK vendors, she texted her assistant. Activate legal protocol. She wasn't asking anymore. She was moving. By the time Marjorie moved to the formal complaints desk, the damage had already been done, but only for them. She was calm. Focused. Silent in the way storms are silent just before they strike. One by one, she spoke with agents. "I'd like to speak with someone authorized to override a system error," she said. Each response was the same, rehearsed, robotic, dismissive. "We've noted your concern, ma'am. Please wait for an update. We don't have the authority. Try the lounge agent." Polite words wrapped around the same cold refusal. She wasn't loud. She didn't raise a scene. She simply kept moving, collecting names, recording conversations, documenting each denial. As passengers walked by, none stopped. Some glanced at her and looked away, the way people do when they see something unjust but don't want to get involved. Then something shifted. A well-dressed man, maybe mid-40s, paused in the boarding area. His name was Jason Patel. He had been quietly watching for over 20 minutes. He saw the smirks. He heard the tone in Tanya's voice. He watched as Dylan got fast-tracked while Marjorie was interrogated. And finally, he walked up to the counter. "Excuse me," he said clearly. "Why was that woman, Ms. Reed, removed from first class? I saw her ticket. This is discrimination." Megan froze mid-keystroke. Chuck, leaning back smugly, straightened up in his chair. Tanya peeked from the side of the kiosk with a scowl. Ron Wallace arrived again, flanked by the same two security guards from earlier. Calm but commanding, he repeated his script. "This is an internal matter. If you're not involved, please refrain from disrupting the boarding process." Jason stood tall. "I saw everything. And so did dozens of other passengers. You people made her into a spectacle." When the guards moved closer, Jason took a step back, not out of fear, but strategy. "Fine," he said, voice steely. "But I'm filing a report. And I have video." He turned toward Marjorie before returning to his seat, nodding once. A quiet gesture. A small crack in the wall of silence. And it was enough. Back in the lounge, Marjorie reviewed everything. Her assistant had already frozen JFK's booking portal. Vendor partnerships were suspended. The charter schedule had been rerouted. Reed Global's network was now avoiding JFK and ATL entirely. No more 5-star group trips, no elite clients being fast-tracked through customs, no VIP check-ins. She opened a private company terminal, protected by encryption, and entered a phrase known only to her legal and executive teams. "Deploy Protocol D." In minutes, Reed Global's internal operations halted every contract linked to JFK and ATL. Red error messages began appearing across international booking systems. At Miami and Denver, private jets and charter services prepared to receive diverted clients. High-net-worth travelers bound for New York were rerouted without explanation. Every partner agency, hotel chain, and elite concierge service tied to Reed Global was affected. Tens of millions of dollars in quarterly revenue for JFK and ATL, gone. And the staff behind the counter still didn't realize the woman they laughed at just changed the landscape of international travel. Within hours, the ripple became a tsunami. JFK's Charter Coordination Center lit up in red. Systems glitched. VIP itineraries from Zurich, Singapore, and Dubai failed to process. Lounge access codes bounced back with authorization revoked. Premium partners, executives with deep-pocketed investments, suddenly found themselves without transport, rerouted mid-trip to Miami or Denver. In the executive boardroom of JFK's International Sales Department, Anderson Bell stared at the dashboard in disbelief. Charter routing, 0. Luxury tour bookings, frozen. Estimated impact, over $40 million in lost partnerships by end of quarter, minimum. What the hell is going on? Someone asked. The answer came in a single line on the operations feed. Protocol D, Reed Global Travel has suspended all operations through JFK and ATL. Pending legal review. Panic hit like a lightning strike. Department heads scrambled to contact vendors. Agents flooded the legal inbox at Reed Global, desperately requesting reinstatement, explanations, a second chance. But every attempt was met with the same firm reply. Due to pending internal review, all claims must be submitted through legal channels. Direct contact with CEO Marjorie Reed will be considered a policy violation. No phone calls. No negotiations. No quick fixes. Meanwhile, at the terminal, Tanya's fingers trembled as she refreshed her screen. System error had morphed into access restricted. Megan's group chat, once filled with mocking memes, had gone silent. The last message? A screenshot of Reed Global's charter terminal showing operations suspended, with her full name circled in a legal notice. Ron Wallace stood at the counter with clenched jaw. His phone buzzed with back-to-back alerts. Emergency meetings. Executive audits. Staff accountability reviews. Karen Smith, the shift supervisor, looked pale. Her authority evaporated the moment Reed Global pulled out. Suddenly, everyone was vulnerable. And then it got worse. Security footage and chat logs were reviewed. Every message about the bold lady, every emoji, every sarcastic comment was traceable. HR teams pulled transcripts. Footage of Tanya mocking Marjorie's accent. Grant dismissing her confirmation emails. Karen's cold declaration, "Your voice alone disqualifies you from first class." All of it now evidence. That afternoon, within a secluded office on the third floor of the terminal, disciplinary hearings began. Karen Smith was first. Legal representatives handed her a folder containing screenshots, internal reports, and formal charges. Public discrimination. Willful damage to client reputation. Gross misconduct. "You're terminating me over a customer," she snapped. "No," the HR director said without flinching. "We're terminating you for nearly collapsing the entire premium operations wing of JFK Airport." She was escorted out with a clear plastic bag of personal items. Her shocked expression mirrored 1,000 others who thought professionalism meant cold power, not accountability. Then came Ron Wallace. His removal was swift. Culpable for enabling discrimination and escalating the situation instead of resolving it. Grant Miller followed. His passive handling and failure to escalate concerns appropriately made him complicit. Suspended indefinitely. Tanya. Dismissed. Chuck Evans. Suspended pending further review. Megan. Her online ridicule went viral after screenshots leaked to social media. By the time her hearing arrived, thousands of viewers had seen her mocking an older black woman for simply asking for the service she paid for. Her access to every system was revoked. Emails forwarded to legal. A media storm erupted outside. The woman they dismissed as irrelevant had just rewritten the playbook, and the price of prejudice. The media storm arrived like a tidal wave. By the end of the second day, headlines began to spread across platforms like wildfire. CEO silenced at airport, silently brings $950 million storm. JFK staff fired after black executives' discrimination triggers global fallout. One woman. One ticket, $40 million lost in 48 hours. News outlets from the Washington Post to Bloomberg ran stories speculating on Reed Global's silent protocol, highlighting the quiet authority behind the crisis. Talk shows debated the implications. Was it a race issue? Ageism? A failure of corporate ethics? But while the world buzzed, Marjorie Reed said nothing. No interviews. No press conference. No public statement. Her name wasn't even mentioned in Reed Global's internal memos, only a title, the CEO. That choice, deliberate and surgical, stripped the narrative of spectacle and focused it squarely on policy. In the Reed Global Los Angeles office, legal and communications teams followed Marjorie's guidance to the letter. Protocol D wasn't just a shutdown, it was a full-scale audit of every airport vendor and partner involved. Background checks were run. Discriminatory patterns were flagged. Staff behavior, training compliance, and internal HR cultures were evaluated. Those who had quietly upheld bias through silence found themselves under scrutiny for the very first time. Meanwhile, in the JFK executive suite, chaos continued. Dozens of VIP clients canceled future bookings. Reed Global's exclusive tier, the highest-paying clientele, cut ties with the airport entirely. Vendors followed. Luxury hotels, international transport companies, and even resort chains aligned with Reed's embargo out of brand loyalty. JFK and ATL's leadership begged for a direct line to Marjorie. One message even read, "We respectfully request a private call with the CEO to address the misunderstanding." Reed Global's reply was chilling in its formality. "This is not a misunderstanding. This is a structural failure. Submit all communication through legal." Protocol D remains in effect until further notice. Behind the public storm, a different kind of reckoning unfolded at a more personal level. Megan Hayes, once arrogant behind her screen, now faced total professional exile. Her name had become synonymous with workplace bias. She couldn't walk into a hiring manager's office without them pulling up the viral screenshots. Her apartment mailbox filled with hate mail, and yet, beneath the shame, something shifted. She sat alone one night, replaying every interaction, every time she laughed at someone trying to speak up. It wasn't just about Marjorie anymore. It was about who she had become. And so, with nothing left to protect, she sent a short message to an organization she never imagined she'd turn to. To compass forward. "I do not expect forgiveness. I want to understand what I never cared about before. I want to make amends. Please teach me what I refuse to learn on my own." Megan Hayes. The nonprofit Marjorie had quietly founded 10 years earlier to train professionals in empathy, equity, and corporate responsibility had just received a request from the same person who mocked her. Whether Megan would be accepted or not was unknown. But for the first time, she wasn't laughing. As the days unfolded, the dominoes kept falling. ATL Airport, initially spared from the storm center, began receiving notices of suspended bookings, delayed group charters, and frozen contracts, each one tied back to their partnership with Reed Global Travel. Internal whispers turned to full-blown panic as executive leadership at both airports realized the scope of their exposure. They hadn't just lost a client. They had undermined a power structure built on trust, discretion, and elite-level service, because they dismissed a woman whose only flaw, in their eyes, was being too quiet to fight back. But that silence had been a trap. For over 30 years, Marjorie Reed had studied systems like theirs. She had endured microaggressions in marble conference halls and been called "ma'am" in ways that meant less than. She knew when to wait and when to strike. Now, with the weight of Reed Global behind her, she wasn't seeking apologies. She was rebuilding the rules. And companies around the world noticed. In Geneva, an international leadership forum paused its program to acknowledge the fallout. One speaker summarized it best. What we saw was not a meltdown. It was a correction. The result of a culture so convinced of its own superiority, it mistook dignity for weakness. And paid dearly for it. Meanwhile, Reed Global launched a new initiative, Echo Access, a secure customer rights platform allowing high-tier travelers to report silent discrimination in real time, tracked and investigated by an independent ethics committee. Airport partners were given 60 days to implement the program or be dropped from the network. No exceptions. For the first time, airports had to meet Marjorie's standards, or lose access to the most exclusive clientele on Earth. In the quiet office atop Reed Global's LA headquarters, Marjorie reviewed progress updates. Her fingers moved with practiced ease, flipping through documents, reviewing footage, reading summaries of disciplinary actions. Her assistant walked in, hesitant. "We've received requests for media interviews, The Times, CNN, even 60 Minutes. They want to know your side." Marjorie didn't look up. She tapped her pen once, then softly replied. "My side already happened. The world saw what they needed to see. Now we build." And that's what she did. Compass Forward, her nonprofit, received a 300% increase in partnership requests for bias training. She approved funding to expand scholarship opportunities for Black and Brown students interested in hospitality and international business. She greenlit grants for senior-aged entrepreneurs to return to work with dignity. She invested in AI-backed hiring oversight systems that monitored patterns in rejections, promotions, and code language often overlooked. Each change echoed far beyond a boarding gate. She wasn't just punishing a system. She was redesigning it. Weeks after the storm settled, a strange calm lingered in the industry, but it wasn't comfort. It was reckoning. At JFK and ATL, turnover was swift and severe. New training standards were installed. Partner contracts included mandatory bias response clauses. Airlines scrambled to revise their elite service protocols, terrified that another silent takedown could be next. But through it all, Marjorie Reed never appeared on camera. Never posted a single tweet. Never stepped in front of a podium. Her message didn't need volume. It was written in firings. In cancelled bookings. In silence that hurt more than headlines. And it wasn't only airports that changed. At the Geneva Leadership and Social Justice Forum, months later, Marjorie finally made an appearance, not as a CEO, but as the keynote speaker of the final panel. Dressed in a simple slate gray suit and soft rose scarf, she took the stage with no introduction, no fanfare, and no slideshow. The room quieted as she adjusted the microphone. Then she simply said, "The most powerful day of my life was the day I chose to stay silent." She paused, letting the words settle. "Not because I was afraid. But because silence, when used with strategy, can dismantle anything built on cruelty and arrogance. It can dismantle institutions. It can unmake empires." Another pause. Then. "When a system tries to erase you with silence, let your silence boom like a wave that topples itself." The room was still. Not out of confusion, but understanding. They weren't looking at a woman who'd caused chaos. They were looking at the architect of a new reality, one where calm didn't mean surrender, where dignity wasn't weakness, and where quiet didn't mean invisible. That day, without ever naming names, she became the symbol of what justice can look like when it's done with intention. Not revenge. Correction. In a world that often celebrates the loudest voice, Marjorie Reed proved something rare, that silence, when backed by strength, clarity, and truth, can shake systems to their core. Her story reminds us that true power doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it moves quietly, methodically, and permanently. At True Echo, we tell stories like this because they matter. Because they reflect not just what the world is, but what it can become. If you found this story meaningful, subscribe to True Echo, share it with someone who needs to see it, and leave us a comment below. Have you ever witnessed injustice that deserved a silent reckoning? We'd love to hear your voice. Until next time, keep your dignity sharp, your silence powerful, and your truth ready.